First of all, I want to thank the Urban Design Group and the Francis Stivels Trust and David Locke, who sponsored this book and without whom the book wouldn't have come to fruition. So thank you very much. I mean, publishers these days demand a sponsor, otherwise they don't bother. So thank you to them. Thank you for the RIBA, who did a very good job, I think, with the book. I'm going to start introducing a few of the conclusions of the book, mainly the origins of the book and the conclusion, and then I will ask two of my co-authors, the only two that are in this country, Katja Stülle and Tim Catchpole, who wrote respectively the German and the Dubai chapter, to say a few words as well. Okay, so first of all, and that's how I should have started, was to say good evening, bonsoir, guten Abend, buonasera, buenas tardes. And that's the easy part. How do you say urban design in all these languages? Eh? Urban design, yeah. Now, there are few people who speak other languages. How do you translate urban design in your own language? Pardon? Right. But Städtebau is not exactly urban design. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's the problem. And that was one of the reasons why I thought we should have a book that tries to explain what urban design, which we think we know what it means, and we do in England, or at least I hope we do. But once you start trying to explain to people in another country, it is tough. And you start saying, well, yeah, it's more or less, it's this, and so on and so forth. But, you know, when you ask other people what you call yourselves, people who do urban design, basically they're urbanists. They call themselves urbanists in various different languages, and not all of them. So why do we not call ourselves urbanists? The word has been used in England, so why not? Because it's not quite the same. And you know, at the end, there's an ambiguity in all these terms, and not just in urban design, but in other terms that makes it necessary to try to interpret what other people do. And of course, if you want to translate it in Chinese, well, I have no idea, and I don't think many of us do. So the best thing is to try to see what urban designers do in these different countries, who they are, you know, where do they come from, who they are, how are they trained, whether it is a protected profession. We've been having a debate for the last 30 years in this country about whether urban design should be a recognized profession, a protected profession, and so on and so forth. Well, is it in other countries or not? How has it changed? How has it evolved in the past 50 years? What are the current concerns of urban designers, and whether urban designers trained in this country would be able to work in another country or vice versa, and whether it has become a globalized profession and things are a bit similar everywhere in the world. So these questions were basically what I gave as a template to the 18 contributors from other countries, and I said, you know, can you more or less follow this order and answer these questions? I won't go through all the various answers because you can buy the book, but I will first of all say a few things about the background of urban design, where it came from, and then some of the conclusions. Urban design, or civic design, or the design of cities, or whatever you want to call it, has very often been related to power, to the people in power who basically controlled the design of cities. And that, whether they were monarchies or incoming republics or whatever, it was very often the case. Two examples, one from Versailles and the other one from the left from Canberra in Australia. So, you know, the creation of a new country, and they want to establish their view of their power. Power also tried to export their ways of designing cities, and that, you know, we didn't have Rome in the book, so I haven't got examples. All these images are only from the book, but in the same way as the Roman castrum was exported to the whole of the Roman Empire, the British Empire designed Delhi in a very particular way, and the French colonials in Morocco and in Egypt, even if they weren't the colonial power, they replicated their home designs in the empire or in the supposed colonies. So that's one of the origin of urban design, I think. The other one is engineering, and today we probably poo-poo the role of engineers. Is Robert still here? Well, Robert always has fights with engineers. But at the heart, at the beginning, a lot of urban design was the work of engineers, partly because of military reasons, but also because of flooding, like in Holland, or because of traffic, or because of population growth, or whatever. The work of urban designers, it was very often that of engineers. Cerdà, you know, designed the famous Barcelona plan and wrote the first treaty of town planning, was an engineer, and Haussmann employed engineers to redesign Paris. So there's a very long tradition, and in Germany you still call yourselves engineers, basically. So the title of architects actually is ING, you know, engineers. So there's a even today there's a close connection between the two. The other thing that you will notice is that because of the engineering tradition, because of what happened in the 19th century in terms of public health, the hygienist tradition, the Beaux-Arts tradition, the City Beautiful tradition, and the expressions of power, you will see that the same type of power, patterns, appears in different parts of the world. So there's not necessarily a copying, but there's an emulation of from one country to the other, and you look at the plans and you say, oh, that could be somewhere else. I think one of them has a name, so I'm not going to ask you what it is. What do you think the bottom left is? Somebody in the room I know should know, but it's Buenos Aires. And on the right here, well, you probably all know, Chicago. So, you know, okay, there are three examples are in the Americas, but you would find similar patterns in other parts of the world as well. And then came modernism, and architects took over and decided that they knew better. And after Siam, zoning was introduced, the traditional patterns of streets were abandoned, a new way of designing the cities based on the object much more than on the background, the street pattern or the squares became the norm. And to a large extent, that's how urban design in this country and in the States emerged, as a reaction against what modernism had done in most of our cities. I'm obviously summarizing this in about 5 minutes, the history of the world in 5 minutes. But to a large extent, if you look at how the urban design groups started, it was mostly a reaction against modernism. And there's one image there that obviously didn't want to appear on a PC. It's okay on a Mac, but not on a PC, and I've forgotten what it was, so I can't tell you. But basically, in this country, the Covent Garden, or the opposition to the Covent Garden scheme, which is the one on the bottom left, that's what Covent Garden would have been if there hadn't been opposition against it. The Euston Station demolition, a number of other fights, if you want, fights, made public opinion and certainly professional opinion flip. And that's more or less also the time when the Urban Design Group was born, and much later the task force, the work of Richard Rogers, the Urban Renaissance, etc. So that's what happens here. But what about other countries? Now, I'm not going to, as I say, I'm not going to go into all the aspects of the book and the conclusion. But basically, what happened is that, having reviewed what happened in this country, I wanted to know what was happening in all these 18 other countries, and whether there was a parallel, whether there was a great difference, whether nothing had happened at all, and so on. So the first thing that is to be noted is that, as I said earlier, in most countries it's called urbanism and it's dominated by architects. It's still when you say you're an urban designer, yes, or you say you're an urbanist, yes, you're an architect. And that's how it's understood, and probably the training of architects is somewhat different, at least in some of the countries, than what it is here. But they have in their title architect and urbanist. You know, that's their professional title in most countries, in France, in Spain, in Italy, you know, all these countries it is like that. In Germany, no, in Germany it's not. But certainly in Latin America it's like that. So there's a number of countries, and in Egypt it is also, because they follow the French tradition. It is so in Morocco, and so on and so forth. So the profession basically is dominated by architects, but architects that understand or maybe have specialized in city design rather than the object. So I think there's perhaps a difference in the training of people as well as the name. But in no country is there a urban design profession as such. So they don't need it, since the urbanist is a protected profession. They don't need to have another one. And you know, that's what one could argue here, whether the RIBA should have an extension and say architect, and RIBA recognizes urbanists as well. I don't know. As I say, we've been having this fight for years. So that means that the academic world also doesn't have courses in urban design. You know, America and Britain, I think, are pretty unique in having courses that are specialized in urban design. You do that as part of your architectural training in most of the other countries. So they don't have to have this other training or other academic discipline. And the same thing happens with research and so on and so forth. No country has in their legislation a word that says urban design. We are lucky that since 2001, I think, we have urban design in a piece of legislation. It's very recent here, but it doesn't appear anywhere else.